I'm Johnny Smith.
I'm Richard Porter.
And this is Smith & Sniff, a podcast in which two friends talk about cars and many other things. There's only one bad thing about the fact that it's very icy and snowy outside at the moment.
Yes.
And for me, can't speak for everyone, it's the fact that I know that the steam rally season is definitely over. And I've let myself down, and I feel like I've let the whole team down because this year I've not been to one steam rally.
No, I suppose...
That's bad, Rich.
No, because we were going to, weren't we? We were full of good intentions.
We really want to go. I mean, I want to take you because I think you'll have a culture shock.
We didn't go to an auto jumble either. That sort of feels like it's more of a warmer weather pastime.
It's definitely an easier thing to undertake in warmer weather. Yeah, I mean, I think my brother might offer a few winter ones at me.
Okay.
I'll have to make the decision of whether I take him up on those.
Why do they not have steam rallies in the winter? Because actually, standing next to a steam engine that'll do it all day, or riding on a traction engine, presumably they're belting out loads of heat. Yeah,
actually, it would be the perfect winter steam engines and coffee event, wouldn't it?
And
well, there wouldn't be steam
so
engines and coffee. It would be steam engines and 3-course dinner. Breakfast, then lunch, then we'll see you for dinner as well because you'll still be here. So
even just, I think steam and tea, because they're very tea events, aren't they? No coffee. No one needs coffee. Have a lovely mug of tea.
No, a barista turned up at one of them and got a right hiding.
You won't be doing that all day, mate. Fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, yeah. They kicked his jockey wheel off the trailer and they pushed it away.
Just slithered.
Kick him with the jockey wheel
away into a hedge. But imagine, you don't get tea baristas, do you? And I don't know why, because you could have a whole... Well, I mean, the thing is, at a steam rally, I mean, not to suggest that the people there are unsophisticated, but it's just there's something about just a proper cup of tea. So you just need some PG tips or some Yorkshire tea, ideally, in bags, nothing fancy. I don't want some Lapsang Sujong or anything like that. Just tea, proper solid tea.
You bastard.
But also you could somehow run the thing that warms the water to make the tea off a static engine.
The urn?
Yeah. Well, the urn, that's what I was looking for.
Just run it a steam engine. Just use the steam as through a heat exchanger.
Yeah. That'd work.
I mean, seriously, that people would pay extra money. You could have Yorkshire tea that was brewed basically by the steam engine thing.
Yeah.
That was also powering all the lights over your head and was also playing an extremely annoying organ with a kind of...
That's so weird, because as we're describing this, all I can hear in my head is one of those organs that you get at things like that playing, because you'd have to.
Those organs, I'm attracted to them when I hear them, but as soon as I get close and I see it, I realise I don't like them.
They're quite nice, though, aren't they?
Yeah, there is a charm to them. Do you know the thing? I've done this ever since I was a kid, and I still do it, but I sort of do it to myself. I don't do it to anybody else, but I feel like this is our safe space, so we can share. You know, there's always an animated Victorian conductor.
Yeah.
Who moves his arm? Is an automaton, I guess, moves his arm up and down to conduct the sort of zany tambourines and things that are being hit automatically in the background.
Yeah.
I always, when I hear that old school organ-esque music, I actually pretend that I'm an automaton conductor. I can't believe I'm saying this shit out loud. This is a real confession here. You have to really mechanically pick an arm, whichever is your dominant arm, and point a really pointy finger as if you're holding a wand. And you just have to violently twitch up and down, but only with that arm, because obviously the rest of you is rigid still because you're made of carved wood or plaster.
Yeah.
Everyone should try it.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
Pop on a bit of that kind of organ music and then just like something, I reckon, buttering toast.
Oh, wow.
Just because you could just repetitively do the same action with a rictus grin on your face that's a bit sinister.
Do you know what I did this morning? Which isn't sinister, but it's also... I timed it so that as the kettle had just finished boiling, I almost faded in through my Alexa device the track by Enya, Storms in Africa.
Oh.
You should try that. It was, even though I said it myself, my kitchen this morning was a great place. Wow.
Do you ever do that thing where you know the kettle is about to click off because you can hear the water is boiling, but just it hasn't reached a point to trip the switch?
Yeah.
Do you ever try and sort of spin around and point at the kettle to time it exactly with the switch flicking off?
No. I've never... What, like Roger Moore at the beginning of the...
That's okay, good.
Is it like the Roger Moore pointing the gun at the beginning of the James Bond sequence?
Yeah, sort of like that. Or sometimes I'll just try and sort of, I won't do the spin, but I'll just try and very casually, like, sort of not look directly at the kettle, but then just insouciantly just click and point at the kettle whilst looking the other way. It's
funny you should say that, because it's reminded me of a time when we used to have a kettle that got stuck on the limiter. A few times. You know, like when you've got a sticky throttle on a car, which can be really scary. I've had that a couple of times.
Yeah.
I've had it on a few barn finds where the throttle wouldn't come back. Not great.
What's the first time you fire it up, it then just races to the limiter and stays there?
Once it was, it just went up. And although we'd done a compression test on it and everything and lubed the bores and stuff, I knew something was wrong, so you shut it off within a couple of seconds. But we had a kettle that we click on and usually go out of the room and be doing something else, because that's the point. You don't stare at the kettle for the whole duration, because that's weird.
A watched kettle never boils.
Well, this one did boil and kept boiling, and I think we came back in the room, the kitchen, 10 minutes after it should have battled, and it was still boiling, and the whole room was just dripping in condensation. It looked like the Eden Project in there, like some sort of... I could have grown some serious palms in there. And it was like, oh, whoa, okay, it's been sitting on the governor all this time. Whatever the kettle equivalent of that is.
Was there any water left in it?
There was half the amount. That was a full kettle. It had chugged and evaporated half of it. Well, it was all down the walls and all the cabinets and the windows. It was not cool.
This is terrible, because I think it's probably extremely wasteful, but when I was a student and I lived in this very drafty, cold old house, and my room was at the top, and the wind used to sort of whistle in through the closed windows. It was all very studenty in the 90s. And I was once in my
windows?
Room. No, actually not at the top. I think it was like I don't know, but it had anyway, it's not interesting. But I was so cold. I had like an essay to write, and I was in my room, and I was sort of almost shivering, and I'd put like 2 jumpers on. I was still cold. I had a little kettle that I had up there because I was too lazy to walk the 2 flights of stairs down to the kitchen to make a cup of tea. I don't know what I did for milk, but I definitely had a little kettle in my room, and I filled the kettle and boiled it, but with the lid open so that steam was just escaping into the room. And then when it clicked off, I just waited a minute and then reboiled it again, just to keep this constant go of steam into the room until the windows all fogged up.
Oh my gosh.
And looking back, it's amazing that like all of my textbooks and things didn't sort of expand to twice their normal size because the room had become so humid. But yeah, it was desperate times.
Was it one of those travel kettles which has a very, very must have a very heavy flywheel, so that when you click it on, it takes forever to rev up?
Yes,
forever.
Yeah.
I've got a travel kettle like that.
It was, and I think they're sort of hotel spec, aren't they? Because sometimes you have a kettle in a hotel room, they feel like they take forever, or maybe it's just because you're in a sort of relatively small space with a kettle and nowhere else to go. That you sort of
I think they
of
are
the kettle.
Slow. I've given up on making a brew before, because I clicked it on, went away, brushed my teeth, had a shower, came back, and it still hadn't finished boiling. And I'm like, right, sod this. I'm not waiting for this. This is silly, stupid, just stupid,
stupid, just stupid.
Yeah.
Now I feel like we need to talk about Jaguar.
Yeah, goodness me. We knew there's, multiples of Jaguar talk, really.
Everyone in the last week particularly, everybody just went absolutely bananas. I've never seen or read anything like it. The online chatter and a couple of less popular car podcasts did sort of early or emergency episodes. And I was a bit like, get a grip, lads. It's not like someone's assassinated the Prime Minister and the bullets ricocheted into the King's brain. It's just a bloody teaser for a car relaunch. But yeah, people went right off the deep end. And it's a new logo, which typographically has some issues, I think, because of the mix of caps and lowercase. But I can also see why they've done it. They didn't want to use a lowercase g because it would have gone below the baseline, and that makes it look messier.
Although it does look like a cat's tail.
Yes, I know. Someone else pointed out that you could draw a cat's face within the G if you did a lowercase swap.
I don't
that's
think
not
that's
quite the
thing.
Upscale image they're going for. But the thing about the typeface as well is that it does remind me of the one used by Smart, and I don't think it looks mega upmarket.
No.
But I looked at it again. I just opened the internet before we started recording and saw something where they'd got a picture of the Jag logo again. And I was like, I'm getting used to it now. And it sort of seems familiar already, as things do. You know, things begin to inhabit their own logo or their own name.
Yeah.
The same way, like if you were an alien, you came down to Earth and you went, so what is one of the greatest musical ensembles that you humans have ever created? And you go, well, it's the Beatles. And the alien would say, what a shit pun. That's a terrible name for a band, but it doesn't matter. They became bigger than that.
Say.
And anyway, so I don't know. This Jag logo, it doesn't look very upmarket to me, but I don't think it looks terrible. I think it's sort of, you can see it's quite designed, but I did see a woman online who said, I'm loving the look of this Jaguar thing and I'm going to buy all my vibrators from them in future.
Yeah.
And it does have a bit of that sort of Ann Summers-y
upmarket
kind of
marital aid spec.
Yeah. The thing that really seemed to get people absolutely in a rage was the associated teaser video, which was all of about 30 seconds. And it's like, it's just a teaser. People go, oh, that Jaguar ad. It's like, it's not an ad. It's just a thing to get you talking. And here you are. So it seems like it's worked.
It's definitely worked. I mean, look, when it first went public and I saw it, I was extremely confused and I was a bit scared / cross / disappointed. And then I had a minute. I went away and reflected on it. And then I thought to myself, hang on a minute, if this has purely been designed to strike up debate, then it's done a fine job because it's made the national news, it's made international podcasts, it's made everyone with a voice. The only person I actually want to know the opinion of on it is Jay Leno, but he's too busy falling down a massive hill on the way from a cheap hotel to a restaurant. So I don't think he's spoken about it yet. But I do really admire what they've done. I like you. I don't particularly like the typeface, but I do like the grooved leaping cat moniker. Whatever you'd call it.
Yeah. I think that's quite neat.
Yeah, and a few people have said, like, adapt or die, innovate or die. And Jag, I think Jag has been cruelly neglected for about the last 5 years, probably more years. And so it's almost been forgotten by so many people.
Well, this is the thing. And when people were raging on about it's an affront to Jaguar's history and heritage, you go, if you run through a potted history of Jaguar, it is not a successful car company. It did well in the 50s and 60s because they made some good-looking cars, offered a lot of performance for the money. They were cheaper.
In the 50s and what?
Oh, sorry, the 60s.
In the 60s.
But William Lyons could sell those cars more cheaply because he saved money where the customer couldn't see it. And as a consequence, the cars are a bit flaky, and that's a kind of constant throughout most of Jaguar's history. And when the exchange rate with the dollar wasn't so good, then the company wasn't so profitable. But when it was, they could sell cars to Americans, and that brought in a lot of cash. But if you look at the last 50 years of Jaguar's life, it's just been struggling. Eternally struggling. You know, it's like they start in the early 70s. They decided we're going to make the next XJ, and then they spent 14 years developing it because they hadn't got the money. And then the early 80s, they sort of went, oh, it's almost ready. So now we're going to do a sports car, the XJ41, the so-called new F-Type. That took 10 years, and then they cancelled it. Because, again, they hadn't got a pot to piss in. They couldn't afford to do it. And this goes on, and they couldn't do the F-Type in the 2000s because they needed the money to do diesel engines because everyone wanted diesel. It's like Jaguar has constantly been on the brink.
So's Aston Martin as well.
So's Aston Martin. I mean, again, it's another eternal struggle story. They've never been a successful company in terms of a business. Successful at making great looking and great cars occasionally, but not profitable in a way that some of their rivals are. I read somewhere that the XJ40, the whole project, cost the same to do a brand new car. It was like zero carryover from the Series 3. I think the steering wheel badge, maybe. The whole XJ40 project cost the same as Mercedes spent just doing the multi-link rear axle for the 190E.
You're joking.
This is just the story of Jaguar. Even under bigger corporations like British Leyland and then Ford and then Tata, they weren't making enough money for their parent companies to justify spending money to do a greater model range or to do things quickly. So they were always a little bit behind the curve. And even when they weren't, they've got a great history of self-sabotage. So that XJ, the X350 of the 2000s, is a very high-tech car, all aluminium body. It was state-of-the-art. It was world-class in terms of the way that it drove, but it had National Trust styling, and it wasn't a success. And then its replacement had very futuristic styling and looked excellent and was still high-tech and still world-class to drive, and that didn't sell either. It's like whatever Jag tries, they never sell cars. And in the more recent times when the bosses went, we have to be the British BMW, let's do a small saloon, a medium saloon, a big saloon, a sports car, still didn't sell. Because, there's a hidden thing here as well where Jag, again, because they haven't got a pot to piss in, even united with Land Rover, which is more successful, they didn't have the size and the financial muscle to be able to do the really attractive PCP rates when borrowing was cheap that BMW and Audi and Mercedes could do. So the XE was always doomed because you can't, you could get someone into a 320D for like 200 quid a month. Jag couldn't do that consistently because they didn't have the borrowing power of the other companies because they weren't successful. Jag is not a successful company. And we love it. They've made some great cars, but they've always been too small and too broke to succeed. And this is a sort of vicious circle that just keeps them down.
Yeah.
And there's all these people who sort of noisily proclaim what they think a Jaguar should be, but they never actually buy a fucking Jaguar. And I think what they do is we have this preserved idea of Jaguar. Jag is like James Dean. He made 3 films, but he became an icon off the back of a very minimal output. Jaguar had the E-Type, the original XJ, C and D-Type, occasional things like the XJ220, but fundamentally Jaguar was rooted in a specific era of glory and a certain sector of people who don't buy Jags or don't buy enough Jags want them to be pickled in aspic and be like that forever. But then you end up with the S-Type of the 90s, not a successful car.
I was following an S-Type R this week, and I do like it. I really like it.
I quite like them as well, but,
I'd have one.
The general public didn't. That car wasn't a runaway hit.
No.
Callum came along, made the XF, which was thoroughly modern, and even though it's an S-Type underneath, that, it did okay. But, of course, then it's, again, the old, we haven't got enough money to do smaller engines, different engines, so it launches only with V6s. Again, it's just like Jaguar's lack of cash sabotages its own prospects. So this is, they've got to do something different. Retro didn't work, modern didn't work, BMW didn't work. The only way, if it's the last roll of the dice, because let's face it, the only options were more of the same, why bother? Shut the whole place down. I mean, imagine the outcry then, and the blowback on Tata and Land Rover, which is successful, would be huge. So it's option 3.
It would be awful for it to end. Yeah.
Yeah, it would. I mean, we'd all be wailing in national teeth whilst we're remembering that not many of us actually bought Jags when they were around. But we like the idea they exist. It's like the Church of England. Everybody sort of goes, well, they're there, aren't they? If they demolished all the churches in all our towns and villages, we'd be aghast. But people don't really go to church anymore. So it's option 3 for Jag. Try something radical. And I'm really impressed that they've not just gone, oh yeah, well, we'll try and change the styling and it's going to be all EV and stuff like that. They've gone, no, fuck it. Let's burn the farm down and start again. And it's going to upset people, but they've not crushed their heritage fleet. The E-Type still exists. All they've done is say, this is a hard reset because we are out of options. And this is the last time we're going to try this, I would imagine. So I think, I admire what they're trying. I don't necessarily think that the typeface is bang on, but it's all right. And I think we'll grow to get used to it. That teaser, it's kind of generic sort of fashion/perfume thing, but it got people talking. I was reading a thing that said millennials like stories, I presume by extension Gen X and boomers like to be told stories in marketing. But Gen Z, they just like vibes. And that was a vibes video. It just set a tone. The colour palette and the people, sort of androgynous models and things, just set a tone. And of course, Gen Z doesn't generally have the money to buy a £100,000 Jaguar, but they're setting a vibe. It's the Lee Iacocca thing. You can sell a young person's car to an old person, but not the other way around. They're trying to set a tone, which is young, because Jaguar's image was old mannish.
Yeah.
So they've had to burn the house down.
I like that. I like that idea. And I am extremely hopeful. I do want Jag to come back bright and confident and willing to share its heritage with new people, new eyes, when they're happy to do it. But I do hope that more young people understand Jag, because you've mentioned a couple of really cool models of Jag from the past, and there's been many of them that have been designed and engineered with real passion, and they drive like that. But if people never even sit in one or even test drive one, they'll never know. And I suspect that was the case. But yeah. I do have a couple of worries, and my chief worry, and as an EV enthusiast, this might sound a little bit weird, I think coming back solely as EV might hurt them, because you're in an interesting situation where BMW sell the full suite. They do EVs, they do piston, they do plug-in hybrid, mild hybrid, blah, blah, blah. They do SUVs, they do saloons, they do little things which... So BMW does well because you got your pop, bang, map, lads kind of market all sewn up with the M2 and all those sorts of cars. You got the sensible old people cars, you've got the executive cars, big family things, but they're all ugly. So your Jaguar coming in at a time when BMW couldn't have made sort of bolder but uglier cars. Mercedes seem to have lost their mojo completely, I think. They don't really know where they're going, and they're not as strong and confident as they were. My worry is that Jag should not be EV only. It should sell probably a piston car as well, and maybe they will. We'll see. But I do think that, it was a surprise to me when Range Rover launched the new full-size range and the Defender without EV options, which I thought was misguided. But
it comes back to the money again. They couldn't afford to parallel develop the way that BMW or Mercedes could, all of these different variants. And I think, again, Jaguar can't afford to do multiple engine options and fueling options. So they've just got to commit to one. And it's like, well, let's go with where everything is eventually going. Let's be bold about that. I wouldn't bet on this succeeding, but I really admire the fact they're having a try. And I wish them the best of luck, because, like I said, this is option 3. This is all they've got left. Historically, Jaguar has not succeeded trying other things. I don't know if they'll succeed doing this, but best of luck for them for trying. And it's there's people sort of on Twitter who have British flags in their screen names and describe themselves as patriots.
They probably drive Kias.
Probably drive a Kia or a Peugeot or something like that, and they appear to be willing the death of a company that designs and engineers its cars and employs thousands of people in Britain. Doesn't sound very patriotic to me. I think, you can disagree with their methods and not like the teaser or the logo, but just take a pause. This is the start of it. They're now drip feeding out little bits and pieces of the concept car, which is going to be seen next Monday.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that car, but I've heard about it. And from what I've heard, it's probably going to make people's heads explode, and not in a good way. If you want Jaguars to be British racing green and have wooden leather interiors, you're probably going to hate it.
This is not it.
Because I gather it's massive and radical, and it doesn't have a trad grille, and it's a very bold colour.
Well, I'm all for bold colours. Looking at
exactly. That's the thing. This is part
video.
of it, isn't it? If you're trying to shake things up, don't paint the fucking thing grey or silver. Do something a bit bold.
Yeah,
and that sort of thing. My final thought on this, because I'm reserving judgment ultimately, it's like this is obviously part of a coordinated campaign. They're clearly quite gleefully happy that they've got people talking. And I know that sort of like, everybody's slagging it off. But everybody's slagging it off. They're car people. And our opinions do not matter at all. We didn't buy enough Jags despite saying they were great back in the old days. So this is about the real world, about normal people, about cutting through and making them aware that Jaguar's coming back. And if you've no real interest in cars, but maybe you have got money to spend on quite an expensive one, you're probably aware this last week that something's going on with Jaguar. And that's half the battle. But my final thought on this is that if the concept, which is supposed to look like the eventual production cars, is mad and polarizing, that is actually very true to Jaguar's heritage, because Jaguar's the company that did the XJS.
Yeah,
which replaced the fucking E-Type, the biggest icon of Jaguar's back catalogue. And they threw it away and came out with this mad-looking car that at the time most people hated. But it was the longest-running Jaguar of all time, and the XJS sold more than the E-Type over its life.
Didn't the XJS sell larger numbers towards the end of its life?
It did, yeah.
Like in the 90s?
It did, yes, that's true.
Which is just so weird.
People finally got used to the styling and realised it was a nice car. You know, it still didn't sell as well as lots of other cars like Merc sells, because, as we've established, Jaguar is not a successful company in the past. But the XJS wiped its own arse. People grew to love it. Now, of course, they look fantastic and people really like them. And I gather that Jaguar are finally not ashamed to admit that it's an influence on what's coming in the future. But if you want to go Jaguar heritage, well, here they are, ripping up the rulebook like they did with the XJ in 1968, like they did with the XJS in the 70s. They replaced the E-Type with a car that looked nothing like an E-Type, because that's the spirit of Jaguar, ripping things up and starting again, I think. So we'll see what everything looks like in the future, because really it'll rest on what the production cars are like and whether anyone actually buys them. But again, if you want to be true to Jaguar heritage, just talk about them a lot and don't buy one. Yeah,
that's right. Or, I think what we should do is wait for the product. Remember, they've got heritage Chinese car makers would kill to own. And if I'm going to be a little bit hopeful and snide in one comment, what I'd say is I hope Jaguar succeeds at the cost of Range Rover.
Ooh, okay.
Because I'm bored of people spending the money they spend on a car which tops the unreliability tables consistently year after year after year. And it's time for Jag, who seems to get tarred with the unreliability brush when it's not always the case, to have a slice of that success, which I think has been a little bit unjust from Land Rover. And I know they're the same company, but maybe it's time for the needle to move a bit.
You'd like the slider to move across to the Jag side?
Yeah, I would. I absolutely would.
I should point out, I've owned two Jags in my life, one used, one new, and one very trad and wooden leather, and one very modern because it was an I-Pace. And they were both excellent. Also both extremely well behaved, no reliability issues. And you can like both.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem with the reaction to the Jaguar teaser is that in the online world, you sort of have to pick a side. And it's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
You can like old Jags, but you can also like Jag to be very modern and Jag to release a teaser with some models that doesn't seem to have any relevance to the cars because there aren't any cars in it. But that's okay. You can like all aspects of Jaguar and all different sides of the company and what you believe it stands for. But anyway,
the I-Pace didn't follow anybody. It was brilliant. And it was completely ground up new, and sadly it didn't really get evolved refined the way it should have, and most people who criticised that car have probably never been in one. They were brilliant.
They were really brilliant. Good. It was absolutely fantastic. Lovely car to drive, and in the great Jaguar tradition, it didn't sell. So it's like it was a true Jag.
We're in danger of talking about an awful lot of sensible car shit on this podcast, but I on the same day that Jag released that strange video, I'm pretty sure it's when TWR and a certain Magnus Walker unveiled a restomod XJS.
Yes.
So it's all getting Jag heavy on social media, which was interesting. I'd like to know what you think about I think it's called the Supercat. I keep calling it the Big Cat, but it's the Supercat, which is V12, reworked V12 6-speed manual, fire-breathing thing with quite a touring car-y, DTM-y, Fast and Furious even body kit.
Yes,
and a very, very updated interior. So it is an update. It's not very heritage looking at all. It's got XJ220 style wheels, I think.
Cool, I suppose thing. So, kind of, yes. And it's I mean, I suppose it's a restomod, isn't it? Really, although they're sort of saying it's not. But it
has to be, unless they've restamped the body shell of an XJS.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, well, what is it then? No, it's not a restomod. It's just go, look at this four-legged creature here that's wagging its tail and barking. It's not a dog, though. Is it not? What is it then?
No, it's a Jaguar.
More than a dog. It's something else we haven't thought of yet. It's not for me, if I'm honest. I find it a bit overdone. It's a bit of a curate's egg for me, but I think it falls into that classic restomod that's not a restomod trap of not quite knowing what it is. Is it meant to be a thoroughly modern update, or is it meant to be sort of in period?
Old school.
There's some very modern bits about it. That thing that restomod people do where they always put really modern headlights on cars. Yeah. But you can tell they're modern headlights because they look, like LEDs, but they're still the same shape and position as on the original car, and it sort of jars a little bit.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I am. I'm not. There's parts of it, the styling, which aren't for me. I don't really like the interior, but what I'm really pleased about is this: it exists, and I'm keen to see where it goes and if it helps to spool up a wider interest in this sort of thing. Because let's face it, the knowledge of it and the awareness of a brand like Jag doesn't have to start with new products.
No.
As soon as you have young people or younger people taking retro Jags and doing stuff with them, suddenly that can have just as much of a kind of an infectious feel. And I'm really hoping that that's what will happen.
Well, but, it's all part of the story, isn't it? And the story does not have to be monolithic. It can have many different parts to it, and this is just one of them. So yeah, it's I don't know. The outside, I would love to see someone do a sort of bulked up, muscular kind of XJS.
I've talked to Ian Callum about doing a restomod XJS for probably about the last 6 years. It's just annoying that we've been beaten to it. But then, to be fair, we have talked about a Mark 10 more frequently.
Oh man,
I think it was agreed that a Mark 10 would be my first choice.
Yeah,
XJS my second.
I don't mind the interior on this. They've done quite a lot of work on it, haven't they? So it doesn't look like an XJS interior. But what I do, it does sort of slightly jar for me. Again, it's this mix of retro and modern, but not quite knowing what it wants to be. That it's got a digital, like TFT instrument panel, but they've painstakingly recreated the XJS dials in virtual form. And the XJS dials are always weird. They're like someone whose eyes are very far apart because the speedo and the rev counter was sort of right at opposite ends with these 4 other gauges in the middle. It wasn't a brilliant layout. And you sort of think, I can see why you're trying to do that, but it's like either, why not just create some beautiful analog dials that replicate, but also modernize, or try harder with the graphic design on the screen. It just felt like sort of neither here nor there. It's like you've spent a fortune, presumably, engineering a screen that just mimics an analog thing that wasn't actually very good from a sort of usability point of view. I just think there's not been enough thinking there. No.
Well, I was about to say, let's stop talking about Jag stuff, but I realised on the day of the Jag angry rebrand reset thing of Jag on social media, I was in the birthplace of ex-design boss and friend of the podcast, Ian Callum. I was in Dumfries, having completed an epic barn find, and we were actually looking for a curry house, and before we set off back down to England in the frost, and we found a curry house, Rich, which had the most crazy fever dream styling interior decor. It was unbelievable.
Is this why you left me that mysterious message, though?
I think I did. We were just blown away by the madness of the interior decor.
You left me a voice note that was, I was like, I sort of in the middle of something, I was like, I haven't got time to pick the bones out of this, but I must remember to ask you about it.
It had pink and red tiger print carpet inside it, and it had pink and red neons round everything. And the toilet was, well, it was all like, we both ended up describing it, me and videographer Phil, that it was like an early 2000s superclub, when clubbing was at its most expensive, I would say.
That's because your voice note went, Curry House designed by aspiring superclub owner from the 2000s.
Honestly,
it's a very confusing thing to say. I guess it now.
It was crazy. The gents' toilet had black tiled floor and I think gold fittings. It was like a sort of cartel boss's toilet. It was just incredible. But it was good curry. Very, very good curry. So that's nice. I won't say the name of the curry house because it sounds like I'm taking the piss out of it, but it was fascinating. And it had a good TripAdvisor rating.
Oh, right. Well, that's very important, isn't it? So,
yeah.
Good.
I was going to talk about Stoke St Michael. I went through Stoke St Michael recently. It's near you, Wiltshire way.
Yeah, okay. Is it? I don't know. I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it is actually. Thing is, has anybody stoked St Michael? And if so, with what? Coal?
On that note, when did
Twiglets?
Marks and Spencer stop calling their own brand products St Michael?
I thought they were still St Michael.
I don't think they are.
Oh, was he disgraced? Did he do something a bit wrong and they had to quietly cancel him?
He was the patron saint of woolly pulleys and cardigans. How could he have done something wrong? But no, they had a lovely sort of retro M&S jacket in the window of a charity shop that I was walking past with my wife. And we stopped to peer at it. And I went, that's proper retro Marks and Spencer stuff. And she went, how do you know it's Marks and Spencer? I was like, well, because it says St Michael in the label in the collar, you can see it. And she went, and? I was like, well, that's Marks and Spencer's own brand. And she went, is it? And she's lived in the UK for,
20 years?
18 years. And hadn't clocked this. Look it up, St Michael. But
she could get deported for that. You know that, don't you?
Yes, I know, because it's unpatriotic, isn't it? Not knowing.
Yeah.
Oh,
very.
Well, here we go. Look at this. I've just looked it up. St Michael was a brand owned and used by Marks and Spencer between 1927 and 2000.
What?
Yeah.
It ended in 2000? I thought it was still going.
But hang on a sec. In September 2021, Marks and Spencer announced they would begin selling clothes using the brand again after it gained popularity on vintage clothing resale websites.
Oh. Vinted.
Yeah.
Etc., etc.
Etc., etc. Yeah. Who'd have thunk it?
That's really interesting. So again, that's a young person's thing that's rekindled a heritage brand. Very, very interesting.
There you go. Talking as we seem to be generally about heritage stuff, but this is very minor. I was researching a feature that I was writing for the Road Rat, and I had cause to go onto the Chevrolet website in the US.
Yeah.
Where I discovered that they've stopped making the Camaro.
Have they? I saw loads of them when I was out then off of Orlando recently.
It feels like this didn't get enough of a mention.
Has it been quietly? It's been quietly killed. I mean, that's a massive brand for Chevy.
But that's it. It's like, it's not, it just seems like they've stopped making it. That's it. I don't know whether it's coming back at some point, maybe as an EV or something like that, you know, the way that Dodge is doing stuff with the Charger. But yeah, it's just dead. You can't buy one, seemingly. That's it.
That's interesting because, you know, I've seen that Mustang consistently probably is the leader, isn't it? Consistently outsells all the others. Dodge has been making the Challenger since, I don't know, for longer than the Skyline R35, which was what we agreed it was made for 37 years. So it's weird how did they lose that race? arms race, and did they just think we've got to focus on other stuff? Or maybe they are going to come back. I mean, Dodge are coming back with a piston. They're still going to sell a piston version and the EV
apparently, yeah.
Charger. But the EV Charger looks interesting. I'm quite interested in it. But the Mustang's obviously really well, the Mustangs, the thing about the Mustang for me is that, and the reason why I wasn't offended by the fact that the Mustang Mach-E came out and people were like, you can't do that. I said, but at least they're selling the core
product. Say something else then.
You can't.
You can't do anything about that.
You, Brian, can't do that. So when I got cross about the Capri, that was my rationale of like, I'm cross about the Capri because you can't buy any other thing with the Capri name on. It's not like Ford have never abandoned the core Mustang, which is the piston-engined coupe muscle car. They can tack on other products. And that's why I think the Capri should have come back as an actual Capri, and then a family of Capris could spawn from this.
But people don't buy medium-sized coupes, so I think that would have been a waste of money.
No, but people are twats, Rich, and you know this. We've had this conversation before.
But you can't force them to buy cars.
But I also think that manufacturers saying how people want these cars, I don't entirely buy that. Manufacturers control the game because they sell what they want to sell. And we have to buy what they sell if you want a car.
Well, yes.
And you've just got to be better as a marketeer. That's the bottom line.
Well,
you just have to, because, Ford were the masters of marketing, and they marketed
that is
TOS
true.
for
They
years.
were. I think
they made you want TOS for years.
That is very true, but I think they've slightly lost their way because, you're right. They used to be able to sell.
They could sell
any old
actual
TOS, as long as
TOS.
it had, a very carefully structured range and good trimmings and things. They were very good at.
And stickers.
Yeah. Anyway, well, now there's a really shit segue coming up. I'm warning you now. Brace.
Okay.
Speaking of buying and selling cars, this episode of Smith & Sniff is sponsored by Pistonheads, and specifically their excellent auction facility, which exists within their buying and selling area of their website.
I'm in it.
As part of their sponsorship, they ask Johnny and I to each pick a car from their current auctions. And you get to decide who's chosen best if you want to by going to pistonheads.com/Smith and Sniff. It'll take you to a forum thread where you can debate who was chosen better. You are generally up on the deal. We've done this twice before, and I think both times your car has garnered more support. So,
is it time for you to fight back?
I don't know. I can tell you what I've picked here in the current auctions. I'm
brazing the auctions as we speak. They've spelt auctions wrong, I've noticed. At Pistonheads, it says AUCTION.
How strange.
Right at the top. See, that's not right,
the French spelling or something, but yes, as we know, it's OCK-SHUN. Auction. So I've picked this time a Porsche 911. Because you did very well with that 60s 911 a few episodes ago. But this isn't a 60s one.
Example of the mark.
This is a 2008 997 Gen 1 Carrera S manual.
I'm looking at it.
Two things caught my eye. One, it's got a very low mileage, 31,840 miles on it. So it is minty AF.
That's very low. What is it? What year is this car? Hang on.
2008.
08, right, okay.
The other thing is it has a red leather interior. It's a silver car, but it has a red leather interior. And it's strong. I do like red leather seats. It has a red leather steering wheel. It's red leather and aluminium.
Oh, I remember that era. Yeah.
It's a punchy look. Now, it also has, from memory, a quite expensive and rare option on it that I think you can still get on some Porsches. Though I don't think I've ever seen it before, except on the configurator. It has painted air vents.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know you could get this on Porsches? You can have colour-matched air vent slats, essentially.
That must have cost a load.
Yeah, it is. From memory, it was a not cheap option, as often options aren't on Porsches.
See, I'm in. So what's great about this is the fact that there's over 200 photos to look at, so you can probably get carried away on looking at a car which you weren't intending to buy, but you might end up thinking about buying. I know you've had a 997 Carrera S before. You had this is a Gen 1, is this a Gen 1? Yeah. So I like this car. I'm looking at it. So it's got the original aero kit, factory fitted apparently. And it says the reason why it's so low mileage is it got put into storage in 2016 and stayed there until 2023. Oh,
I don't. I mean, this is clearly an acquired taste, but I kind of like the fact that it's not a sort of just predictable. You know, my 911 when I had it was black with a black interior, which is classic,
safe,
but not very adventurous. I like the way that the Pistonheads listing here describes the interior as unapologetically superb. So
it is, though, isn't it? I like colourful interiors. I feel like they're the ones that the people who buy pre-owned cars, are now sniffing around. Someone's been bold with a configurator and gone, no, damn it, I'm going to do this. Try and stop me.
It's that Matt Farah thing, isn't it, when he bought that cassis-coloured 80s 911 and was considering respraying it, and then realised just how rare it was because it was such an acquired taste, and then sort of it became like a source of pride. How
you rock it with conviction.
Yeah, exactly. So there we go. I'm going to rock my bright red interior with conviction. What's caught your eye?
Whilst that's cool, and whilst as I'm brising, there's a Scooby-Laroo Impreza STI JDM spec Hawkeye, which I have been hovering over. Also an Alpina, an E28 BMW Alpina, which is absolutely sweet example of the mark. But I am going to go Porsche again, decided.
Yes.
I'm flying the Boxster flag.
Oh.
You can't see it, but it's in my lounge right here next to me.
It comes with the car.
It's massive.
Yeah.
I'm challenging you to this duel. I've got a similar colour. It's the same silver. 2005 Porsche Boxster S 987 Gen 1, and of course it's a Manuel.
Of course.
This hasn't done 30,000 miles, although it is still really low. It's done 50,000 with one former owner. And looking at it, it's GT silver, the same as your car, with cocoa leather, a special order. Yeah, have you had a look at the cocoa innards?
Well, no.
Hi, I'm Cocoa Innards.
I'm Cocoa Innards, performing live tonight at the Jazz Cafe. This is James May spec.
This is James May spec. It's really nice.
James had a cocoa inner on his Boxster, which I think might have been GT silver. No, that long went. He's still got what replaced it, which was the white 997 Gen 2 manual.
He needs to get that colour changed, I reckon.
Well, you could wrap it, couldn't you? Because that's the thing. I have sort of half-heartedly said to James, if you ever get rid of that Porsche, do let me know, because imagine a manual 911 that's been driven by James May. That car would have been respected. It's not used in anger unless fully warmed up.
And imagine if he lent it periodically to Brian May, who went on a road trip on it, but it did have 8 oil changes over a 2-week holiday.
Yes.
So it's fine.
But then imagine between James May and Brian May how much frizzy grey hair you would find in the floor mats.
Oh, gosh.
Dry, grey, long hairs, just all intertwined in the floor mats. You'd never get them out.
You'd look like you had a fight with an Irish wolfhound and a pair of shoes.
Right, anyway, I think that Boxster, the brown interior, again, talking of interiors, the brown interior on that Boxster is what makes it a bit good.
It looks so inviting.
It's a manual Boxster anyway, but it's especially nice because of that.
Yeah, so it appears to have a full service book. It's registered January 05 in Porsche Central Park, London. Matching brown carpets. Oh, Yeah.
Brown carpets.
Yeah, Bose. They've both got Bose sound systems, and this has got the original telephone module with steering wheel controls, which I don't know why, it's a bit pervy, but I do like that.
If you want to wade in and decide whether it's basically brown versus red this week, choose your leather colour and corresponding champion, me or Johnny. Go to pistonheads.com/Smith and Sniff, and you can browse all the Pistonhead auction by going to pistonheads.com. Moving on, I wanted to read out a couple of messages which are sort of back refs to previous episodes that I thought were particularly excellent. The first one is from a listener called Paul. Paul says, listening to On the Other Side of Things, you got chatting about Terry Nutkins, and it brought back to me a fantastic memory from 2004. I used to buy a lot of hot hatches and turbo cars back in the day and keep them for a while before flipping and moving on. Anyway, during my time of enjoying the Carlos Sainz edition Toyota Celica GT4s, I sold my red one and was scouring the free pages and online sites for a replacement. One Saturday evening, while having a few beers, I fired up my computer and logged on to AutoTrader. There I found a gleaming black Carlos Sainz GT4, only 3 owners from new with full Toyota history. I was in luck. It was exactly what I wanted, so I rang the number to be greeted by a voicemail of a guy whose voice I recognised, but I didn't twig at the time.
No way.
I left a short but sweet, sweet message to call me back, and a few days later the phone rang. The gentleman said he was returning my call regarding the car. We chatted, and he told me the previous owner was a titled owner, a lord, who was his close friend. And he bought the car a few years back, as where he lived got bad weather and he wanted 4-wheel drive for winter. I laughed and thought, fair point, but why not a Hilux or something? And he replied, I wanted sporty and something to hang out on the bends leading to my house on a gravel lane. As the conversation progressed, I said, your voice sounds very familiar, to which he replied, yes, I've been on the telly. My name is Terry Nutkins.
Oh my gosh, this is wonderful news.
The phone went quiet. I replied, the Terry Nutkins from the Really Wild show? To which he replied, yes. Do you want the car? I said, willing to fly from Northern Ireland. And he agreed to meet me at one of the Scottish airports, Edinburgh from memory, then proceeded to tell me he lives in some sort of stately home. From memory, it was in the Isle of Skye.
He does.
Yeah, it was what you said,
he did.
He lived in a Scottish sort of...
I knew he'd live in a castle or a really grand old place, yeah.
Anyway, Paul goes on to say, he then offered to bring the Celica to the airport on an agreed Saturday morning. I flew over and walked out of arrivals across the car park to be greeted by the sight of Terry Nutkins woolarding and grinning at the front of the Carlos Sainz Celica. Wow!
Oh, this is so
cool. He offered me a coffee, but I had to politely decline as I had the 12 p.m. ferry to catch back to Ireland. He signed the service book for me and shook hands, then wished me all the best and a safe journey. What a surreal experience and a really cool guy.
This is when the podcast is better than ever, because it joins this odd community together. Who would have thought that Terry Nutkins was a bit of a helmsman? I would have never, ever thought of that. If he was ever going to buy a Toyota, I would have presumed it would have just been base model single cab Hilux.
No. Well, yeah, you wouldn't, because then you can
chassis.
sort of get some otter food or something in the back. But no, he wants to hang it out on the gravel road to his house. So he's got a Sainz spec Celica. That's fantastic. Well, if anyone else knows of any cars that Terry Nutkins, or indeed any other nature presenters on the television have owned, then please get in touch. hello@smithandsniff.com. Very quickly, another email that's a back ref is from a listener called Simon Hill. He says, listening to Richard's unsuccessful prototype hunt, it reminded me of an incident with a camouflaged prototype at Lotus Cars. I worked there as a powertrain engineer at the turn of the millennium. We were developing the Series 2 Elise at the time, and the project was highly confidential. At the kick-off meeting, the entire team were called into a room and lectured by the chief engineer. We were told in no uncertain terms not to mention what we were doing to anyone, including friends and family. If it were to be known that a new Elise was coming, sales of the S1, which were already on the slide, would stop altogether, and that could spell the end of Lotus Cars, which was already on a typically precarious financial footing.
Another British car company.
There we go.
Some great products.
Before, isn't it?
Yeah.
But never quite getting full success.
Yeah.
Simon goes on to say, for powertrain development, keeping the project under wraps was easy. We simply fitted the S2 engines into S1 cars and never opened the engine cover in public. However, as we approached the end of the development phase, it became necessary to get some durability miles onto an actual vehicle. It was decreed from senior management that we could do this testing, but only in a camouflaged car on site at Kettle and in the dark.
What?
The vehicle, yeah, I know. It was mad. They were so obsessed with security. The vehicle technicians came up with an ingenious method of attaching temporary camouflage to hide the shape of the production intent body. They modified some VX220 clamshells to fit over Elise Series 2 body panels with clear lenses over the lights and lots of matte black paint. It was reasonably convincing, especially at night. The time came to start a week of overnight testing. There were to be no hijinks on the track. Tyre squeal at 2 a.m. would surely attract unwanted attention. I volunteered to do the first stint, starting from midnight to make sure nobody would be about. As an eager 26-year-old car enthusiast, the thought of having a prototype Lotus and the entire Kettle track to myself for a couple of hours was pretty exciting. I rocked up to security, collected a walkie-talkie, picked up the car from the workshop, drove to the test track gates and requested to be let onto the circuit. Round and round I went, and apart from nearly collecting a few large hairs, it was pretty uneventful.
Oh, I thought the creatures.
Yes.
Not
yes,
James
not
Bay's
large
been
hairs.
combing himself on the track again.
Oh, God. The Mays have been in here with their frizzy hair. As Simon says, the next morning I came into work and was immediately summoned to the headmaster's office for an almighty bollocking. While the grown-ups were reading me the riot act, I was frantically trying to work out what I could have done wrong. It turns out that an enterprising chap in the next village had his ham radio tuned to the frequency of the Lotus walkie-talkies. On hearing me announce over the radio to Lotus security, "I'm here to drive a secret prototype Elise around the track. Can you let me on, please?" he climbed the water tower next to the main straight and papped me driving round.
Oh, my gosh.
I was told that if any pictures appeared in the press, I'd be out on my ear. Luckily, none ever did. I imagine what he ended up with was grainy photos of what looked like a rough black VX220 at night, and no magazine was interested. So I lived for another day.
Oh my.
I did go on to crash the very first production Elise S2 on its first day out in the real world, but also managed to get away with that one. CMTMB, Simon. Thank you, Simon. Excellent stories from the pointy end of car development.
Well, I'll wrap this up by saying I started with the morning of the Steam Rally season and not going to one this year.
Yeah.
I want to end it by saying somebody, and I believe they DM'd us on Instagram, Smith and Stiff on Instagram, and the problem with DMs is they get buried alive. Yes. Somebody, and I will try and find who you were, led me to this incredible discovery where, did you know there was a steam engine manufacturer, and you cannot make this shit up, called Smith and Porter.
What?
I am not joking. American company called Smith and Porter, and I've been forwarded a photo of an actual steam engine with a casting which says Smith and Porter. So, Rich, this has been laid out to us in the stars.
Bloody hell!
Yeah. Does that mean we are historically linked to the steam rally Roggen?
Clearly, this is written as
actual Smith and Porter. I know.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We need to find out more about this.
A strange, prophetic note on which to end. But before we go, I have 3 things to tell you. One, Johnny's engaged in this fascinating project to remake some black and white double-act comedy, but with the bombastic big man played by our favourite female singer, under the working title Laurel and Sade. If that's not to your taste, then there is, of course, the Late Break Show, which has lots of excellent videos about cars on there. What have you got coming up this week?
Well, just like the guy from that old insurance advert, Stupid, who have actually Premium Search, they were called, were they?
Yeah.
Something like that. This weekend's barn find is a Ford Fiesta XR2. who the angry man in the advert, I think, was stood next to. This is a fascinating one because it's a touch of gardening. The car is next to a garage, not in it. It's been in a garden.
That's the one you sent me a picture of, yes. It looks very garden-y.
It's been in a garden for 25 years. The owner bought the car when it was 3 years old and used it loads and then parked it up for what he thought was going to be a year or two.
Oh, God.
So, yeah, I thought the car would be a wreck. I was pleasantly surprised. Go and watch it, or else.
Second thing I've got to tell you is we are doing some live shows. This Thursday, in fact, the 28th of November, we are at the Mini Factory in Oxford. As we're recording this, there are a few tickets left, but they may have gone by the time you hear this. I don't know. Go to smithandsniff.com and follow the link to the live shows, and you may be able to still buy a ticket if you're quick. And we will see you all on Thursday. Looking forward to that. The December show in County Durham is sold out for sure. And then in February, we are doing a show in Eastbourne. Tickets are available for that. And I can exclusively reveal that we will probably, almost certainly, be doing a live show as well in January. So keep your ears open for more details.
I was going to say, the February show in Eastbourne and possibly the yet disclosed January show. What a perfect Christmas present that would make, a ticket, Richard.
Wouldn't it be that, Johnny?
Don't you think?
What a good idea.
I'm just saying.
On that note, merch as well. If you're looking for something to tell a loved one that you would like for Christmas, what about a Smith & Sniff t-shirt or hoodie or cap?
There's nothing more attractive than a woman in a Smith & Sniff beanie.
That is true.
Somebody once said.
The third thing I've got to tell you is that when Stephen Fry played the crusty old General Melchett in Blackadder Goes Forth, he was 32.
Goodness me.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? He was actually, I worked this out, the first episode of Blackadder Goes Forth was recorded 3 days after his 32nd birthday, so he was only just 32.
Oh my gosh, he looks about 50.
I know, it's nuts, isn't it?
What's going on?
Yeah, well, there you go. All right, well, that's enough of this for now, but we're back on Friday with another Ottersot answering your questions and a regular show, which will be a recording of our live show from this Thursday in Oxford at the Mini Plant following Monday. So see you then. Goodbye.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, mate. Bye.
So you've enjoyed this podcast, but you've had a thought. Is there a way here today that you could show support? Well, you could join our Patreon. What wonders that it brings. Early shows and extra notes on that side of things. You could buy our merchandise. We've mugs and hats, but still no ties. One day we will make those pies, but in the meantime, guys, hey guys, like and subscribe, and maybe leave a nice review. Like and subscribe, we know you know just what to do. Like and subscribe, we don't want to take the piss. Like and subscribe, but we were told to ask for this. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
Sorry, I just got distracted. I was just thinking of a TV show starring Stephen Fry and Brian May called Fry and May. I think if those two sat in a caterum, there wouldn't be enough room for both of their heads, because I think Stephen Fry's head is
he's
2.5 times bigger than most other heads.
What about Stephen Fry and Jeremy Clarkson both physically large-headed men in a catering or a K car.
In a Morgan with a roof.
Oh, God.
They'd be clanked down. It'd be like a cranial conker match.
They'd both end up unconscious, wouldn't they? On a track day, you'd suddenly see the car just coasting to a hole. You're like, what's happened? They've like a Newton's cradle. They've just knocked each other out